Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone and call the Independent Sales Surtax Oversight Committee workshop to order. And if we can start with roll call.
These are our logistics for this evening, everybody. Just so you know, we have a traveling mic and we can pass it around, but we'll just pass the mic down as we go. And Ms. Campbell, we have everybody by alphabetical order to help with minutes and what have you. So here we go.
Alyssa Brandemil.
Greta Campbell.
Sandra Dowdy.
Jim Dozier.
Fred Elliott.
Randy Chris.
Joe Mazurkowitz.
Dennis Perlman.
Carmen Salome.
Chris Semino.
Susan Millay. Oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to.
Yeah, we can continue on after just introduction of staff who's here also. You all could introduce yourselves.
All right. I am Greg Blurton, the Chief Financial Officer.
Susan Millay, Executive Director of Financial Services.
Chris Patrica, Lee County School Board.
Greg Adkins, Superintendent.
Feel like Phil Donahue. It's got the big mic and everything, too.
Kelly Letcher, Director of Budget.
Sarah Cox, Budget.
Frederick Ross, Director of Procurement Services.
Tracy Adams, Procurement Coordinator.
James Flock, the Director of Maintenance.
Barbara Cedino, Assistant Director of Maintenance Services.
Dwayne Alton, Executive Director, Infrastructure Services.
Rick Parfit, Director of Safety and Security.
Trey Davis, Chief Information Officer.
Scott Rickenbacker, Senior Program Manager, Facility Development Planning.
Long title.
Lauren Stillwell, Director of Communications.
There you are, Chair.
All right, thank you all for being here. Just to let the record show, we did have 3 individuals who noticed us for the asking to be excused, and without objection, Jim Nathan, Steve Shimp, and Fred Atkins will be excused. Also, just to note for that Fred is, in his reason for being excused, had to travel to Georgia or the untimely death of his mom. So I know all of our prayers and thoughts are with him and his family at this time. Next thing on the agenda is the approval of the January 31st meeting, but that's my bad. We're not going to approve the minutes because this is a non-voting meeting, it's a workshop, but we do need to discuss the minutes. Because our secretary and our chair are on the same voting committee, we can't talk outside of this meeting, which prohibits the secretary from sending me her draft minutes and me reviewing them before you get them. So what we have proposed to do, and if there's once again any input or ideas, we happily accept them, is that Greta will draft the minutes and send them to, and they'll come out to all of us, and we will have to address any additions or corrections prior to the adoption of the minutes at the next meeting. There's no other way to actually do that because minutes are something that we vote on collectively and we can't discuss them privately.
As long as when you just hit reply directly to Greta and not reply all.
No, even if you hit reply to Greta, you can't because Greta's voting on the minutes.
Okay, so so you want her to send them to us?
Send them to us. We're going to have to do we're going to each individually take some responsibility in reviewing the minutes as to content, and then bring any additions or corrections to the meeting and share them here. If it was a staff function, we could do it differently, but because our staffer is a voting member of the committee, we cannot do it that way.
Understood.
Okay?
Sure.
Yes.
Could our secretary send it to Joni?
Yeah,
who will then, just so we don't have all these emails, we have to do records?
Yeah, the actual, I talked to staff, and I've had 2 meetings with staff since our initial meeting, and we have talked about the administration of this. And we originally talked about setting up individual emails and separate accounts, and I said, listen, we'll all use our own email accounts. The school will, at my direction, or at the secretary's direction, ask the staff to distribute the emails per our request. And then I would ask that each of you set up an individual folder in your inbox for ISOC communications. So if there ever is a request for public records, you would just have to compress that folder and send it in. Okay? Try to keep it as simple as possible without violating any laws. Because sooner or later, I would suspect we're going to do something that's going to make someone want to know what it is or how we got to that decision. And there'll be a request for public records. Okay, that being done, public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on any issue concerning the scope of services of the ISOC committee. Does anyone in the public, from the public, wish to address the committee? Have 3 minutes. All we ask is that you state your name for the record and then limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no one, we'll close that portion of the meeting and we'll get ready to turn it over to staff to review the information below. Prior to turning it over to staff, I want to just remind members of the committee that what we talked about at the last meeting and what I've shared with staff and prepping them for coming up with this information. My philosophy as chair is to make sure that each committee member feels extremely comfortable informing their position in preparation for voting on issues. So it's my hope that to give you all the information in the format that you feel comfortable with, so you are ready to come to a position prior to voting on that issue. In that light, what I'm looking for from the members of the committee is, as you review the information shared to us from staff, remember prospectively we're looking for we're going to be looking at strategically, why is the project being proposed to be funded with revenues that we have oversight of? And is it allowed? Is it on the list or part of the areas that were associated with the referendum question? And then the other thing we're going to have to vote on each meeting is a retrospective look, and we'll be reviewing and actually having oversight. Were we given the right information, and is it the best format for us to review those two things? I would suspect each meeting going forward after this, we would actually be taking two official votes. One, retrospectively looking back on any expenditures that occurred in the prior quarter, because we're going to meet once a quarter, and then one looking forward for the proposed expenditures, specifically in the areas of projects. So we'll be voting in what I would be hope to bring to the board on a quarterly basis in making our report, saying that we approved retrospectively the expenditures of the previous quarter, and we also approved prospectively the proposed expenditures of the upcoming quarter. Any comments or questions with regard to that? All right, Greg, I think we have consensus on where we're going. Take us home.
All right. Well, again, welcome everybody, and thank you for being with us this evening. This part of the workshop will be focused on the sales tax budget forecast, item number 4 on the agenda. The first part that we want to review is we'll go back to the sales tax, the 10-year sales tax budget forecast. We'll show that to you, and then we'll go into the detail. And if you recall, at our last committee meeting, our first committee meeting on January 31st, was a discussion and a focus of where are we going for the remainder of this current school year, this current fiscal year, and next year, and providing that project detail. So we have that detail to go through with each of you. And then there was also a request for us to, how does the sales tax revenue and appropriations, how does that relate to our 5-year capital plan, our capital outlay millage? So that is what you have in hard copy in front of you, and which I will also put up here on the screen as we go through that to show you how it will be how it is and how it will continue to be part of our 5-year capital plan and how they relate to each other, what areas you will see both sales tax and capital outlay millage being spent on capital projects. And then as we go forward with this plan over the next several years, being able to provide this committee the detail and being able to break out capital outlay millage and sales tax revenue as it's being spent on capital projects. The other piece that we wanted to go through with you today and discuss, because these will be items that we will go through in more detail at our March 28th at our next committee meeting, is projected revisions to this plan through up to that meeting and beyond. And we'll get into some of those details as we know, business changes every day, priorities change, and things happen. We are expected to get our first bit of revenue as early as next week. We were contacted by the Department of Revenue on Tuesday to confirm all of our information, our address, our numbers, as they are getting ready to send that first amount of money to us. When we asked, what is it? They said, we don't know yet. So we're still waiting on that. So that is going to be a revision to this overall sales tax plan that we want to have discussion with you in this workshop. And then as we go into this committee's next meeting at the end of the month. Then there was a few members that had a request or just really to understand our investment policy, because as these funds are received, they will be put in a short-term investment account. So we had sent out our board policy. That is our investment policy. And I also asked John Grady, one of our investment advisors here, to, if there were any specific questions about that, we can talk about that with you today on that particular policy. And we are super excited. We didn't know if we would have it up and available, but we do have a demonstration, and it is a demonstration. It is in draft form, but we are going to show you our public website prototype, which shows our sales tax budget and plan from a district level that gets all the way down to the school level by project basis and funds that have been allocated and expended. Again, this is a demonstration. The data that you have in here is for demonstration purposes only, but Susan Millay is going to be walking us through that towards the last part of this. And then I will turn this back over to the chair to discuss future meeting dates, member comments, and adjourn. Does that sound all right? All right. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Before we get started, could you refresh my memory? You probably told us this, but are there restrictions on exactly what the tax dollars can be spent on versus general revenues? Is there a difference, or can you just lump them in there?
We have it itemized by these particular areas, and it's new construction of schools, the maintaining of our existing facilities, the safety and security projects that we have, and initiatives, technology as well that goes in the classroom that also helps support the safety and security that we have. And so each of those different details, and in this budget, you will see the construction projects, you'll see the maintenance areas. We have the detailed project list from a maintenance perspective that we can go through with you as well by school, and what different pieces and specific projects that will be going. But it cannot be general fund related. It cannot be expenditures on people. It is capital related expenditures.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So when we had met last time, we had talked about getting some type of existing standard or existing programs or projects that we could make a determination on whether this money was supplanting that money.
Correct.
Or this money was in addition to. And I thought that was going to either be sent out or addressed in this meeting. So that's something I'm wanting.
And so we have that in the capital plan that you have, it will be finalized as well, based on some of the revisions that we're going to talk about here as we go through these next pieces.
Yeah, Dennis, that specific question in relation to the 5-year capital plan and how the numbers are commingled for specific projects is explicitly an answer to the question that was raised at our original meeting.
Yes. Okay. All right. So with that, I will jump in and just, again, refresh everyone on what we had seen. And Mr. Alexander, I'm going to dim the lights on you here. And we appreciate everybody's patience with the logistics of this room. We have welcome aboard this evening. So every room in this conference room and the boardroom is taken and spoken for this evening. But it's also a workshop. It's nice and quaint. We're kind of in a U shape. We get can see each other a little bit better than in the boardroom. But so I appreciate your patience. So if you recall, the budget outlook for the sales tax, we have the 10 years going out across what we are projecting as far as revenue, interest income, and then the projects, how we are appropriating for it, our construction projects, maintenance, safety and security, and technology. And then the further breakdown going forward as we scroll down. And so our construction projects, our safety projects, our maintenance projects, and as we were in our meeting on the 31st, the discussion was, okay, so we have monies budgeted for our maintenance projects going forward in air conditioning, in building improvements, in site improvements, windows. So what schools and where and how are we budgeting for the following year, and where are those monies being spent? And then how, Dennis, do they relate back to the capital plan and the relation of in addition to or what we already have? So as just a quick refresh and what you have available to you that we went through on the 31st and then was sent again in the email from Joni, who's over here in the corner, the detail of these 2 years and then going forward. So these are the projects that this revenue can be spent on. Again, our new construction. We have Triple M, our next high school that is located at the Griffin Drive property. That is well underway. And by the way, too, as we get into specific on the projects and the expenditures, we do have all the staff introduce themselves to you. So this is a workshop. This is our time together. If you have specific questions about some of the initiatives, some of the programs, some of the projects that we have coming forward, we are here to answer your questions. So that's the other piece, is I can be moving around with the microphone to staff as well. But so we have the new construction projects and how they are forecasted out over the 10 years. Our safety projects. And one of the things, this jumps around on me, I apologize. If you look here on safety projects and you see the budget for 18-19 and you say, oh my goodness, $153,000. Why is that all that we're budgeting for the remainder of this year with sales tax dollars? And the reason is because we have already expended a tremendous amount of money on these initiatives. And when we say safety and security, this is not just a budget that Mr. Rick Parfit has in his safety and security department. He has tremendous support from our maintenance department, from our IS, our information systems department, from our operations division in the installation and actually carrying on and carrying forward the policies and programs that we have set forth to keep our schools and our staff and our students safe and secure. So we have expended a lot already this year from our capital projects and our capital budget. But you can see as we go forward 19 and 20, we have a significant amount of money that we have budgeted and invested that is for a lot of safety and security initiatives, such as access control, surveillance with integrated technology. So it's doing a big refresh on our camera systems in our schools. Single point of entry, $1.1 million. We have already expended money on single point of entry, making our schools have one point of entry to help with the securing of those schools. Hardening doors, there is what we call a red lock program that we have begun, but it's a significant expense that hardens all of the doors in each of our schools and the classrooms. We've already been underway with some of that. We have a large expense coming in 1920 for the hardening of our doors and ADA safety improvements. So as it relates to the sales tax budget and what you will see out there, the $8.6 million is that budget is shared by maintenance, it is shared by safety and security, it is shared by information systems. So as we go through some of the project detail and you see the numbers, we have each of those categories, but the responsibility in the budget is shared by multiple departments. Okay? Yes, I'm coming to you.
So for the new construction schools, are those safety projects already built into the pricing for those?
Yes, they are. Yes. So, and that's a great question, because as we go in the project detail for this year and the remainder of this sales tax plan, obviously the newer schools, you won't see them on big facility renewal projects. You won't see them on big safety and security technology projects, because it's already there. It was built in and is part of that, the cost of that construction. That's a good question. And then our maintenance projects, HVAC replacements, upgrades, as we go out in years, auditorium seating, building improvements, covered structures, electrical, lighting, floor coverings, windows. We have a couple of big projects that we're in the middle of and doing window replacements for this year, utilizing sales tax dollars. But to your point again, Dennis, these are also areas that our capital outlay dollars also cover. And so these are areas where you see maintenance, our maintenance projects. You will see a cross mingling, if you will, of capital outlay dollars that are going to support this. What we envision and the reason that the sales tax, what it will help from a maintenance perspective is, back in the day, not too long ago, 10 plus years ago, we were receiving significant capital outlay millage dollars. We were getting PICO funds. And then a lot of you, as we went through this process in this campaign, we told you about the capital crunch, how our capital funding was way up here and had been decreasing steadily as our student growth was increasing steadily. We, at that time, when our capital funding was way up here, had a tremendous proactive renewal program. And that has been significantly declined to nothing. This will allow us to catch up on things that have needed to be done, and then ultimately, as sales tax dollars come in, we can pay as we go to have more of a proactive rotational maintenance program, being more proactive with our maintenance. But as we go through this process with you and over the number of years, is being able to show you what capital outlay millage is picking up, what sales tax dollars are picking up, okay? I don't see too many scrunched eyebrows or looks. Are we okay so far?
Greg, just two
Yes, sir.
things. From a standpoint of going forward, we mentioned previously that we're probably only going to be looking at the current year and one future year with regard to projections for revenue and expenditures, specifically because things change.
Yes.
And if we're anything in, I do 5-year projections for all kind of clients, and anything after 2 years out, a year out is pretty iffy. So if we focus on the current year activity and 1 year out, I think we'll be focusing on numbers that won't be changing so tremendously. We get out 3 or more years, we're going to be looking at numbers that are pretty much wags.
What's a WAG, sir? I'm just kidding.
Oh, thank you, because I
You're
didn't want to have to tell you. Wild and guess. You figure
Wild,
what the
yes.
middle one is.
Okay. All right. So to that point.
And then the second part of that is just, we already talked about construction. It's probably appropriate to mention at this point is the fact that there'll be a portion of sales tax that will be bonded.
Correct.
And there'll be a portion of sales tax that will be a pay-as-you-go. And why don't you address that mix right now?
Okay. So we'll address the mix between the two. And I will also, as we go through that, we'll tell you, to your point about bonding and how things change, we can also talk about what those revisions to our sales tax plan and how it fits in with the capital plan and what we see as changes coming based on when we get our first bit of revenue and also the bonding question as well. So as we have our sales tax revenue and appropriations here in the sales tax budget, it becomes a line item in our 5-year capital plan. And this is, you have this hard copy here as well for you, and then we will also have this electronically for you for your record as well. And so what you have is estimated revenue. Sales tax will have its own line item going across. And for 17-18, we did not have sales tax revenue. The $31.6 million for 18-19 was our forecasted revenue amount. That number is going to change when we get our first bit of revenue here, hopefully as early as next week. Once we get that number, we can then adjust our forecast based on actual collections, and then forecasting that out. balanced with what historical has been. And we've been tracking and running historical averages as the data keeps coming in from the Department of Revenue in the state. And the 1920 forecasted amount of revenue for that full year and going out, we're expecting it to be higher than the $65.4 million. On average, over the last few years, even when Irma hit, sales tax revenue for Lee County and what the district's half cent would be has been growing at about 6%. Hurricane Irma, it still went up 3%. And even in that year, it was just a little over the $65 million as the updated data that we received from the Department of Revenue came in. So the revenue numbers are going to change, especially as we get actual collections here within the next week. We have, as part of our regular capital plan, our impact fees, everything that we have that's already and always has been part of our capital plan. And then we go into the appropriations. How are we spending the capital dollars? And the highlighted areas in yellow, the interest is the interest that gained from the whatever we have on deposit from sales tax revenue. So as we get into the appropriations, the areas that we have highlighted in yellow, and these are construction projects. These are the areas where sales tax revenue will be used. And an important note to this 5-year capital plan. This capital plan is reviewed and renewed and approved by the board on an annual basis. And this is the capital plan that was approved this past September. And it was created and approved without sales tax because we had no way of knowing if sales tax was going to be voted and approved in November. So this capital plan is changing with the sales tax revenue, and then how we have these numbers changing based on what sales tax is now going to pick up. In a perfect example of where capital outlay millage or debt was going to be used for these projects, these construction projects, versus now what sales tax is going to be able to pick up. A perfect example is our construction projects. Our high school triple M, the middle school that we have coming in our East Zone double M, the elementary school that we have budgeted for our East Zone as well. The Cypress Lake and Franklin Park remodels, that is pending state's approval. Once we have those final submissions into the state, all of these construction projects without sales tax, we're going to be financed with COPS debt. Now the sales tax will be able to pick up a good portion of these in a pay-as-we-go, as well as sales tax bonds. And I'll talk more about sales tax bonds as we step through this, as we get through this piece of it. So the capital plan is going to change now that we do have the sales tax, and as we get the sales tax bond information in. So we'll have sales tax bond revenue and then the debt appropriated with that, which is significantly less than what COPS financing would be in constructing these schools. So that's yes, sir, Dr. Atkins.
Could you just talk a little bit about how Lehigh Senior Edition is going to work?
So the Lehigh Senior Edition, the 500-seat edition at Lehigh Senior High School, as well as Triple M, the high school that is underway. These are two projects that we're going to go forward regardless, with or without the sales tax. We were going to go through financing for both of those projects because we don't have the cash to do it. So the Lehigh Senior and Triple M are projects that have already started. We've already have broken ground and are on schedule for Lehigh, for that addition at Lehigh Senior to be open and ready for the first day of school this next school year. Triple M has been well underway. We're about 70% on getting towards our total project cost on that project. So these were projects that were going forward with or without the sales tax. We have the opportunity, and as we were going through, even before the election, at looking at what we call a revenue anticipation note. So in anticipation of a sales tax coming in or that revenue coming in, we had the possibility of getting a note for these two projects that would ultimately be repaid by sales tax revenue, or if we did not get the sales tax, by COPS financing. So now that we have the sales tax, we will be proposing, and we'll be briefing our board on this on Tuesday, of doing sales tax bonds, which are much more flexible than COPS financing. The interest on those is very favorable to us. They are only a 10-year period of time. We will not have these projects financed out any more than the 10 years of this sales tax. So we will be proposing going forward with sales tax bonds for the Lehigh Senior Edition and Triple M. Right behind it is the East Zone Middle School MM. And that's another consideration that we'll be discussing with our board on Tuesday about MM being a part of that as well. As we go through, and with the elementary school in the East Zone, the elementary and middle school, the schools that we have proposed for our South Zone, the remodels, those all will be pay as we go. As revenue comes in, we're paying for those construction projects with the sales tax revenue and not debt, as we have forecasted and planned right now. I see a hand. Mr. Semino.
Can we just look at the year 1920 on yours and crosswalk it against what you provided? The $16.1 million for the middle school in 1920. That shows up apparently as $31 million on this slide. So are we partially funding the construction through sales tax and partially funding? So these are not unique projects, uniquely funded projects in the sales tax. They're blended projects. Correct.
They're blended projects, but it's also a great point of, because this capital plan is now changing. Because these numbers that we have in this capital plan and the numbers that we have here, I'll go to the construction. The construction projects. When we had the referendum language and we had all of the referendum projects and the estimates at that time in the summer coming forward, these were the estimates at that time for the construction. And now as we've gone through and today and getting like I said, 70% of the way through on Triple M, and then also Lehigh Senior, that has already been total project cost and under construction already for the amount that we have proposed for it. Construction costs are going up. The original estimates on building our high school to where they are now, those are big increases that this plan will reflect, as will the capital plan, based on as we get to a total project cost on Triple M. These numbers in our capital plan are going to change. The numbers in our sales tax budget are going to change to reflect what we get as far as our updated estimates on construction costs for building these schools. But so as you see, for instance, the middle school in our East Zone, and you see the 16.1 and the 16.1, the smaller amount that you have is the $3 million is the pre-construction phase, is the first phase of construction. And so that's the cost that we have to engage our architect, to engage our CM, to start designing the school. And then the bigger chunks, and these projects are not overnight projects, they're not summer projects, they span over multiple years, so they are spread out over multiple years.
So the sales tax did not enable us to create these?
No, these schools were happening, they were going to happen with or without the sales tax, that is correct. What's that? Well, so Triple M was happening. Lehigh Senior was happening. Double M was right behind it. If we could not afford it, because interest rates were too high, our debt was going to be above our threshold. So yes, these projects would only be able to have happened with COPS financing or sales tax, and still the caveat if we could afford it. But to that point, Chris, it's a good point. We may come, as we go through this next school year and beyond, we look at and update our enrollment forecast and our enrollment numbers daily, and we report to them and have them available quarterly. Those numbers, for instance, in our South Zone, we may see the shift of enrollment start shifting out of the South Zone and school, and we may make a determination that South Zone school is not needed to start in that year, and we can bump it out based on what we see. So that's another example of how this forecast, especially after we get after the first and second year, will change. So.
middle school. If we had $35 million, we could build a middle school. But the middle school is actually going to cost $65 million. And the high school, we're contributing $65 million, but it's really a $95 million project.
So what you have in front of you, the referendum, that was based on the estimates that we had as we were going through the referendum and the data that we had at that time.
Projected a $35 million, or you projected just the revenue?
We projected the cost of that school at $35 million, correct.
And now you're projecting it at $65 million.
That's correct. Based on what estimates that we've gotten from our construction industry and the people that we're working with. Again, estimates. And believe me, Scott, we go back and forth on these, and one of the things and the difference in what we had as we went and as we have previously built to where we are now is in our two-phase approach, our pre-construction phase, and getting a total project cost to go forward. That's a significant difference. That is a significant difference. We were at our construction advisory committee meeting last night, and we were given a similar presentation to that committee, and having the numbers up there, and wow, that is a big jump. Let's talk about that. Scott is explain. This is the data that we were receiving. Do we think it's going to be that actual cost? It will probably be less, but we are not going to underestimate like we have done in the past. So that piece of it is a forecast and will continue to change as we go forward. Go ahead. That's why we're here.
Will we be, because these are now blended projects, part of it from the sales tax, which we have responsibility to oversee, part of it from a capital plan. Are we committing to the dollar amount from the sales tax? Or are we committing to or will we be committing to a % of the project?
So these projects, these new construction projects, are sales tax. We do not, it is not in our plans to fund these projects through capital outlay millage. The sales tax, now that it has been passed, our plan and what this plan reflects, and as it will change when we sales tax bond Lehigh Senior and Triple M, that sales tax revenue, whether it's bonded, pay as we go, will be funding these construction projects.
I think to just be a little bit clear about it, our recommendation to the board on Tuesday will be to fund those projects from sales tax revenue completely, not a mixed bag.
So the change on Triple M will be a recommendation for funding $65 million to a recommendation for
No, that's an estimate. It is not. We are not recommending and getting board approval for a $95 million project.
That's what it would be.
Right. We are briefing our board on the 12th. This plan, everything that we're talking about tonight, as well as our recommendations for and how we will be coming forward and changing the plan to include sales tax bonds for the Lehigh Senior Edition and Triple M. And also the updated capital plan to reflect the sales tax revenue and the sales tax bond revenue and the appropriations for those projects as we have going forward. And also explaining to them how the sales tax and our 5-year capital plan are related to each other.
Greg, let me just try to restate what I think you two were discussing so that we all understand it. The only change from the prior position before the sales tax referendum was passed and the way it is today is you're changing the source of revenue to build the schools. You're changing it from what was COPS, if it was possible with COPS, to sales tax. Now, whether you bond sales tax or pay as you go isn't a decision you're ready to make yet, but it will be a decision you'll have to make.
Correct.
But the initial decision is just changing the source of revenue to build those two projects.
Man, that was it. That's where you're trying to, that's right. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
So you had talked about the original school was 35 million when the projection was made, and then it moved to 65 million a year later, give or take?
I didn't make that supposition.
It's what
Right.
it's what it says.
Mhm.
So was the school parameters at 35 million, were they enhanced to get to 65 million in part, or is that just a change in cost of materials and labor and all those things during that period?
I'll have I'll have Scott Rickenbacker, our director and senior program manager of facilities.
No problem. I wasn't involved with the original estimates, but the estimates weren't supported by the current market environment for construction. When I was asked to get involved, we created a new process, which is engaging with our architects and our construction managers and building officials, designing the schools with the $3 million that Greg mentioned for Lehigh Senior, to design VE and actually create the budget for the school, and then ultimately, when the design is 100% construction documents, going out for bid and going to the school board with a total project cost. Today, am I okay to give some numbers out that are part of our MMM project? It's
Yeah.
estimates.
Mhm.
Today, we received the third station point reporting for MMM High School. This is only construction costs. Do not get this confused with total project cost. The construction costs have been about 78 million. Today, we got the 70% construction drawing estimates from our construction manager professional, and it's at about $80 million. That's just the construction cost. What they've done is they've used their programs, they're feeling the market, they're asking all the professional subcontractors within our area for pricing. That is our target. That's how I report to the board and other executive staff in the district. And once we get 100% drawings, we will release the general construction manager to solicit, advertise for bids. Those bids will be compiled, they'll be reviewed by the district, and that will become part of our total project cost that goes to the board. Total project cost includes hard construction cost, ancillary cost, what we call FF&E, which is
Furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Furniture, fixtures, and equipment, correct, to furnish the school out. And if there were land involved, which in MMM there isn't, was already owned, that would be part of that total project cost. So the total project cost involves the entire school from start to finish. But construction costs have typically gone up on various trades, but typically 12% over the last 2 years. LL High School, quickly, it was a smaller school without a third floor. The contractor's cost was $62.2 million. Through VE, we were able to bring that down $3 million, which we reported to the board. And now this school, which is substantially larger, 270,000 square feet, you can see the jump in those construction costs. So if you were to add a third floor, let's say, to Bonita, that's about a $7, $8 to a $10 million add. Add it to the $62 million, you can see where we were at a price that is 2 years old. And the market's escalated, so.
Thank you, Scott.
Any other questions with regard to where we are at this point, so everyone feels comfortable? How about formatting and how it's laid out? Revenues broken down by section, knowing that there is and we'll see later where they have the ability to drill down deeper if we need to drill down deeper all the way down to the school level. But from a format standpoint, that we're all good with that? Okay. And I think what the big thing for me is if we drop off the out years, the numbers will get much bigger on the same size spreadsheet.
True. And to speak to the detail for the remainder of this year, to give you an example, for instance, we talked about the construction projects from a maintenance perspective and the line items that we have. You know, our air conditioning, we have a chill water system upgrade scheduled for North Fort Myers Academy for $1.6 million. Security emergency lighting, electrical fixtures slated for Sunshine Elementary School for the parking lot facility, that's $16,000. Emergency lighting as we go through, so as part of the detailed project list, and then as we go, for instance, out in FY20, where we have a significant, many more projects coming forward, and I'll magnify this. Roofing projects, re-roofing the campus at Villas, at Calusa Middle, Southwest Florida Public Service Academy, Cypress Lake High. We've got the target amount that those projects are slated for. For instance, at Villas, $2.4 million. Cypress Lake High, $1.9 million. This is what has been forecasted and put in our project list for FY20. So as we start some of the work as far as getting the ball rolling and engaging is going to be starting in this year, and it will span this fiscal year going, but it is budgeted and a project that is slated to be done for this next school year. So this is some of the detail also that this committee, as we go forward and we are actively collecting sales tax revenue and going through the project list of what we, to Mr. Chair's point earlier, is looking back, what have we spent, and then looking forward, here's what's coming. And for this collective committee to review and approve their oversight of those projects. So the detail from a maintenance perspective, the construction, as we go forward, you'll see as all the ADA red locks, that was the $8 million that we had out there for our schools. So the detail, and this is a very large document that we will have emailed to you as well, so you have it electronically. So as we go forward for the remainder of this year out to next year, our detailed project list for the projects that are listed in our sales tax budget. Now, what is changing? And we talked about a lot of it already. This budget outlook, we are updating and revising so that when this committee meets again at the end of the month, you will have updated sales tax revenue forecasts. We will have an actual number to provide based on what we have collected and how the revenue then is going to be adjusted accordingly for the remainder of this year out through next year and beyond. Updating our interest income. Updating any information related to some of the estimates that we've been talking about for construction, and how it's going to relate into what we are projecting budgeted sales tax revenue versus the expenditure. Another item in here that will be added is sales tax bonds. I had mentioned that we are going to be recommending to our board on Tuesday that we go out for a sales tax bond for Lehigh Senior Edition and Triple M. That'll be about $115 million, and the annual debt service on that is going to be about $14 to $16 million. And again, that is going to be repayable via sales tax income and revenue, and it is only those bonds are only the maturity of those will be less than the 10 years. Not having to go out for COPS financing for all of those construction projects. If you look in our budget book, we have our debt in our capital plan, and they're at around the same time as this sales tax, as the sales tax comes to its 10th year, the majority of our COPS financing also falls off. And so the debt position of the district is from looking out into the future, has very good prospects. More of the money that we have available can go right back into the classroom instead of in interest payments to our lenders. So you will see an added area here for revenue for the sales tax bond, and then the debt service on the sales tax for how we are appropriating for that debt. So this is going to, the next time that you see this, and as we have that revised and after our board briefing on Tuesday, we will have this updated information and we will email that to you in advance so you have plenty of time to review it and we can discuss it at our committee meeting at the end of the month.
Questions at this point?
Greg?
Yes.
This is not exactly germane to right now, but I wondered about the thinking. I go to other places and I see beautiful schools, and we have good schools here. I'm not saying we don't, but we have some really old schools. Is our capital plan to knock some of them down and rebuild them so that we can start with all this extra money, upgrading our facilities so they have a better look? Because, you know, the schools are a big economic driver for us getting business into this county.
People moving
I
in.
just think we could go up a notch with money, obviously.
Yes, so facility renewals, and I spoke to it a little bit in the beginning from a renewal standpoint, and in our existing facilities that aren't tear downs. We do have two schools that we have proposed, and a part of our our regular capital budget, and we've already have discussed it with our board. We have proposed to potentially tear down and rebuild Cypress Lake Middle School and Franklin Park Elementary School. They are well over 50 years old, and you can see Jimmy and Barbara in the back nodding. Maintaining those schools is extremely costly. But in order to tear down a school, we need state approval to do so. And they have very specific, it's called a custody report that Scott and his team put together to send up. You have to have a very sound reason to tear down a school. And at least once the state gets it, it's at least a 6-month process for them to give the thumbs up. So we ultimately need state approval to do that. So we have that in as part of this plan, is those two tear downs. As we go through these 10 years, we may have another school that, heaven forbid, a catastrophic event that, takes out a part of the building, and we may have to, these funds could be available to do that. And this oversight committee would have its view on and recommend and oversight of, hey, that's a sales tax expenditure. The renewals of our existing schools, from re-roofing, from site improvements, building improvements, technology, the safety and security is all part of this plan to keep our schools, again, safe and secure, but also doing well and not being costly because of, they're just getting old and in disrepair. That was part of this whole plan.
What about just pure aesthetics?
As far
let me address that question. As someone who supported the bond issue and had that asked specific questions about this revenue stream, would this be the pot of money that makes us whole? And it doesn't.
No.
It's still shortfalls. So part of our work is going to be weighing the expenditure for improvements, as needed improvements, as you pointed out, vis-a-vis needed improvements in other areas of the school system. And that's part of our, the efficient and effective use of these dollars.
And to the point of the capital outlay millage and the sales tax revenue, maintenance also has capital outlay millage that is part of their overall maintenance program as well too. And so how we are able to, as we go in these meetings, to show you how, they are mingled, but then separated out, what specific amount of sales tax revenue is going towards the maintenance projects that we have listed here versus our other maintenance projects that we have funded by capital outlay millage. Ms. Patrica.
So I'm pretty clear on how we prioritize our new construction projects based on projections on where new students are moving. But how are we going about prioritizing our maintenance projects?
We have our maintenance team back here as well, Jimmy and Barbara. They, taking the pulse and what is out there now currently, the sales tax, and being able to identify, the schools that, we've been putting off projects because the funding's not there, now being reprioritized and on this list, and things that have been on the list for a while that now we can do. But from an actual, how we prioritize based on the needs of the schools that are out there and how they relate to this sales tax plan, I would let Mr. Flock speak to that, and I think Kelly has an answer as well. I'll mention that first. We also do have a capital committee, an internal capital committee that is made up of most of the individuals in this room, where we do present. We have school requests all the time for maintenance needs, for facility renewal needs, for technology in the classroom or additions or what have you. So we receive those requests, and we meet on those requests twice a month. If there are additional requests, we have all of the data and decide together if that's a priority from the capital outlay side of what we do. And they could be anything from technology, to maintenance, to additions, to doing something with some of the outdoor facilities outside of the school. So we have that capital committee that reviews and goes through that process on a bi-weekly basis. And Mr. Flock.
I'm going to start off by saying that we started, prior to the tax initiative, we started a building infrastructure assessment program that we started about 5 years ago. That's how we came up to where we're at today. We constantly evaluate our buildings every year. We have 3 zone managers that work for maintenance, and they go out constantly inspecting the building, roofs, air conditioning. Also, too, we utilize our work order system. We look at trends on there, problems we see at certain schools. Obviously, with the amount of money that we have focused more on the bones and infrastructure of the school than we have aesthetics, because right now we have roofs, air conditioning, electrical, plumbing. I know you've seen a big thing going around town now, or in the world, about cast iron pipes. So we still have schools with cast iron pipes in them. We have took measures in the past with what money we have to try to band-aid us along, but I would say we've leaned a little more towards the bones of the school than we have aesthetics. But with that, I would like to say that we have painted over 30 schools in the last 2 years. We have really took a focus on with Tier 3 schools to improve the aesthetics of schools. So there's a lot into that we've put into that. Also, I would say dollars from the actual schools that they put in there for aesthetics also.
You might want to also mention there have been some things where you've improved aesthetics while you're improving security as it relates to fencing. I'm just thinking of a couple like the Benita projects that you went down and took out some chain link fencing, for example, and utilized the structure to make it more secure, to include using fencing that was probably more appropriate for that area.
Yes, to add to that, Dr. Atkins, I would say that just about every facility we go into, we look at the whole facility. That is part of our goal. When we go in there doing any kind of work, we look to see what we can do to improve the aesthetics of the building. Benita Elementary was a school that we went into, and I will say that school looked like it didn't look the best. I was going to say it don't, but I'm going to hold myself back on that. But we went in there utilizing maintenance staff and pretty much went in there in about a 3-year period and completely turned around that whole school on the way it looked. Trying to be as smart as we can with what dollars we had.
Well, and just as an example, I know that in speaking with the Hertz people, a rumor was getting out that the Lee County School District schools are surrounded by, barbed wire and concertina. That's absolutely not the case, but there were chain link fences. What has happened down in Bonita Springs is you have wrought iron fencing that has been used instead, and what we've also done is we've taken, if you look at the Bonita Springs High School, where you actually utilize the structure of the school building to provide security. You have windows that are actually up higher than what you normally would have. You have the fencing integrated into the structure instead of sitting way out in front of the building like you do see in some of our older facilities. We worked with the community of Bonita Springs that actually helped us with that project, including some funding, and I think you have a better product today with a more aesthetically pleasing looking facility.
Thank you, Mr. Flock. Dr. Atkins?
How do we decide whether Fort Myers High School should get an air conditioning unit before, or a new air conditioning system before another high school?
I would say when it comes to HVAC, we look off of life cycle. We look at how long, like say Fort Myers High School's got chillers in it that are 28 years old versus South High School has air-cooled chillers that are 9 years old. We look at the life cycle. Say in an air-cooled chiller, they're designed to last 12 years. The chillers at Fort Myers High School are designed to last 30 years. So we look at that and utilizing our infrastructure assessment that we do with the zone managers.
And it's the same for like a roof. They look at life cycle for a roof. They look at things in the interior too, like carpets, the blinds, some of the tiles, etc. What's the life cycle of that, and then they put that on a schedule. And ultimately, the hope is to get back to the rotation schedule that we used to have in place here, so that you look at those life cycles and you can build what your project list is based on life cycle of the components of a building.
Would it be safe to say there is a industry-driven rubrics for all of those kind of questions rather than a political, emotional decision?
Yes.
Thank you.
Joe, you're killing it, man. You're just getting it right succinct. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Well, and down the poll's electrician talking, it's pretty clear.
And I think when you get back to that, it's much more efficient than the fix it when it breaks syndrome, which is where we had moved to. We used to have a really good rotation schedule so that we could replace a roof in a timely manner, so you weren't dealing with, the roof leaks and all the costs that are associated with roof leaks. Indoor air quality is something that has come up in the school district, and a lot of it, when you talk about water intrusion because of poor maintenance, these are preventable costs that if you have a facility on a rotation schedule, you're going to prevent those types of things occurring based on your maintenance schedule and replacement of major components of a building.
Any other questions before we move into investment policy?
And Mr. Chair, since we've been going through the budget and going through those numbers, if at your discretion and approval, we can move agenda item E ahead of the investment policy, since it's all related, and we can show you what the public-facing side of all this would look.
I think it's a good change. Yes.
Okay. So with that, I will turn this over to Susan Millay. But before she brings it up, disclaimer. What you see here is a demo. It is our prototype of what this will be. The data that you have on here is not real data. So I know that we're going to show an example of what a school page will look like. So if any of you know or have kids or people that go to that school, those are not the actual numbers. So just again, this is all for demonstration purposes only. We're very excited about the word transparency. We use quite a bit. Our public has used that with us. This whole purpose of this committee and what we are doing with this is to be transparent and providing the oversight. So from a public-facing side, we are all in this room constituents, taxpayers. Some of us have kids, grandkids that go as part of the district. This will be a tremendous resource for all of us as we go forward. And our goal is this will be launched at your next meeting. And we'll also be showing this prototype, this demonstration to our board on Tuesday as we are compiling and finalizing everything that we talked about tonight and getting that data uploaded in here because ultimately this data will be updated on a quarterly basis. And the potential of it going forward is tremendous. So I'll turn it over to Susan Millay.
Thank you, Greg. So we've seen all the hard data, all the numbers, and now it's time to look at something a little more soothing on the eyes. So this is a prototype. This is a demonstration, and the data behind it is not actual. So I just want to reiterate that. So Change for Change is the name of our sales tax referendum initiative. And so we're going to keep that branded name, and that will continue to be the name that we report on. So from our district main website, there's a Change for Change site, and on there we will be showing this actual data that is tracked. So the main page that you come to first is the district overview page. So on this page, you will see the sales tax revenue, the interest income that we receive, and the expenditure. So all that data that we've been talking about rolled up very simply, very graphically easy to view. On the left side, we have the revenue. And so this is the sales tax coming in, and as that data changes, this will be updated. And then the allocations to the schools. So this is at the highest level. This is district-wide. This is all projects. You'll see that here let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. So on the allocations area, you'll see that the 4 categories that we're reporting on are the same 4 categories that were on our initial website. They're the same categories. We've presented all of the data to you, and we have added reserve for future projects because we will have funding coming in that will be reserved, and so as that's collected, that additional pot accompanies the 4 categories here. You'll be able to hover over and see data by, in this fashion. So further down on the page, we have, now I'm going to zoom back out. So there's further decomposition of this very high-level data down by the 4 categories that we've talked about. Oh, and look, there's our little revenue estimates and projects are subject to modification based on actual data. Just got to plug that. All right, construction projects, maintenance projects, safety projects, and technology projects. So we're using web standards here. So these 4 categories are listed alphabetically. So on our sheets, I think it went construction and then safety. On the website, it'll go in alphabetical order of the 4 categories. So that will, that's the way the public would expect to consume this information. Then you'll be able to see the additional information. Let's see if I can scroll over. Oh, I think I am scrolled over. And so you'll have project information. We're working on what this drop-down information will be here on the projects. For each category, we'll see the projects. And again, we're at the highest level. We're at the district view of this data. And next, we'll be able to drill down on a school-by-school location and see all 4 of those categories broken down. So here we have, again, our prototype data with information there. Any questions on that main district page? Okay, so then the next, across the top, you'll see the banners, the elementary schools. We have that broken into 2 categories since there are many of them: the combination schools, middle schools, high schools, and special centers. So if we go down to Allen Park, this prototype information is presented here for the School of Allen Park. Each school will be listed with their address, and if they have a logo, that'll appear as well. And the similar to the main district page, the overall sales tax revenue that has been expended at Allen Park, the interest income, and the prior year carryover, and then the specific projects that are or the specific amount of monies for each of the categories. So this one doesn't have new construction, so there are only 3 categories, not 4. And then the individual projects and what has occurred, the amount allocated or budgeted for the school, as well as what has been spent in the period that's being presented. So this will, and again, it's broken down by category. So we have maintenance, safety, and technology here. No new construction at Allen Park. So it's pretty straightforward looking presentation of information, kind of what you would see on your bank statements or so forth. Any questions or comments? Oh, yeah. Pardon? Yes, why don't you talk about that? And I also didn't mention ADA compliance and mobile devices.
Right.
My only comment is
2
you need to
things.
invest the district-wide money where you invest the Allen Park money, because it's much better return on investment.
Yeah. Just a couple quick things. There's an information box when Susan scrolls down. There's going to be one on the district site, and then there's one on every school site. And we, in the communications department, can update that. So when construction starts on a project, we actually can put in, hey, Allen Park, you're getting your new air conditioning system, yay. We can put pictures in there, so if there's stuff that we're going out and we're breaking ground on something, or there's something cool that we want to show, we can insert pictures, so we can customize these pages a little bit more once things get rolling. The other thing that was super important to us, obviously, was that this is ADA compliant, so it is ADA compliant, and it is also responsive, so you don't have to be on a desktop to use it. You can be on your iPad or your cell phone, and it will condense, and you'll be able to scroll through and do all that too, so it'll be easy to see on those types of technology as well.
When you're doing this, it's a great idea, and I really like it. But somewhere along the way, over the next 10 years, could you make references monthly, quarterly, saying, thank you, taxpayers, Allen Park got a new air conditioning system because of the 0.5% sales tax, because you might want to renew it in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Exactly.
it's a political thing at that point.
Is there language on there to refresh the memory of the grandma who's using your site, just to remind her, this was the referendum and this was the only way I can use this money?
So this is actually a page that you have to get to from the main page. So on our main page, Susan, I don't know if it's up on the main, it may be up on the school district site already. We redesigned the entire change for change page itself and took off some of the stuff as we led up to the sales tax so we could rework it. So there are points. I don't know if it's live yet. Just see it. Yeah, just hit the change for change under our district and see whether or not the new page is up. It may be. Laura may have done it. Yeah. So you have change for change, and then when you scroll down, we're going to make these a little smaller, but you have the lovely picture of Dr. Atkins, the high quality, which we have thank you to the taxpayers right there, and then we're going to have topics under that. So each of those things are going to help describe. We still have what capital versus operational is because a lot of people don't understand that. We still have all of our financial audits listed so people can see the financial transparency, and then a link to your committee. So there's a link from the board page to that, and then also on this page to this committee. And then school by school projected projects will be those pages, and then also there'll be a district overview page. Also, we'll be doing it by year. So on that district overview page, it'll say like fiscal year 19, fiscal year 20, although we'll probably do it in a little bit of a nicer thing so the public can understand, so they can actually toggle back and forth through to see what we're doing this year and then also what we plan to do next year based on your recommendations that you want to have 2 years of data up there. And then once we have that, we can archive whatever page was the year before and we can add the next year in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Randy, there's your language, almost word for word. We want to thank you for support of half-cent sales tax education. Help to do.
I mean, like it's a brass band.
Yeah, we'll do that too. The picture that's up there can all be changed, so we can put graphics in there. We can do all of that.
Randy, we could even put a sign out in front of the school that they're building. This is, you know, as a result of your penny tax. You know, just that someone wouldn't sit there and say, wow, they're doing all of this, but they're not paying the teachers or something. Just to refresh the memory of how, you know, the use of.
Okay.
Other comments or questions regarding the website prototype?
I think it's excellent, and it's what I was looking for, the breakdown and the percentages and by school. So kudos to all the designers on that. Is there a way that, because I get asked this all the time, how many seats have we added? Is there a way to track that or project that? Because that was the main thrust of all this, more so than I think the maintenance and what I hear people talk to me about, where all these people moving in. Is there a way to 300 seats added this year or next year or whatever, so they can see that progression of that's really the crux of the construction side? That's just a thought.
Absolutely.
And just to piggyback on the idea of putting signs at every project, I remember many moons ago in the last century, we did a geobond at Cape Coral, and every project we built had a big 4x8 sign saying your geobond dollars at work. And it was really received well by the public.
Absolutely. Okay. Susan, if you would. Yes, thank you. And that is a combined effort. You know, Trey Davis behind us, our CIO, and Dwayne Alton, executive director, their team, Jason Stanford, and Jim Short, working with Susan and a variety of other people. It's going to be an awesome program that we have. Investment policy, board policy 6.05. We have the opportunity to go through that policy verbatim. Mr. Chair, if you're ready. But I do have John Grady. He is our investment advisor from Public Trust Advisors. They manage our short-term investments, our cash that we have, the accounts that that some of the sales tax money as it comes in and we are getting ready to appropriate it will be sitting in interest bearing in our portfolio. So we invited John down here if anyone had specific questions so that we could speak to that. But
I think
Chair?
an overview of the instruments you'll be putting the sales tax revenue in, since that's the focus of this committee, and what kind of returns we're expecting based on, I know the market is today, may not be the way the market's going to be tomorrow, but just some oversight, 30,000 foot level.
Sure. All right, Mr. Grady. Sure.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, members of the committee. John Grady with Public Trust Advisors. I'll stand up. Pardon me. We're fortunate to have the relationship with the district. Excited for this sales tax. It's going to provide a great benefit. Part of that will be to help increase the revenues that you receive through interest earnings. And we recognize we've been in a very low yielding environment for a while. We've seen rates move up in the last couple of years, which have been beneficial. But a couple of things I do just want to mention, I'll be brief, but for public funds in general, and that's all our firm invests, are public funds, like the districts, safety is the first priority, of course, liquidity, and yield is the third priority. So you want to earn a competitive yield on these funds, but the primary goal is safety first. So the first thing I'll mention is they would be invested in fixed income assets only. I would imagine most of them will be invested in, as Greg mentioned, what we call cash vehicles, but they're money market fund types or local government investment pools. They're designed specifically for public funds only, and they provide daily liquidity. And the current rate on a local government investment pool in this environment is right around 2.5%. And for those of you that may know what interest rates are doing right now, it's a very flat yield curve. So you really couldn't earn much more than that if you went out and wanted to invest in a 2 or 3 year treasury anyway. But as your investment advisor, our goal will be to work very closely with the district staff and utilizing the information that you spent a lot of time on tonight and recognize that it's an ongoing process, is to build out an investment program for you that utilizes daily liquidity and also ladders out in short-term investments for you to earn a competitive yield, but also to ensure that you have liquidity for these projects as they move forward. Is that a good overview? And if there are any other questions, I'm certainly happy to answer that.
Questions?
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any fiduciary responsibility as a board here to the investment decision-making policy or anything, or are you just kind of informing us? That gets handled within the...
Yes, this committee does not have fiduciary responsibility at all, but just as it is part of our overall budget and forecast, it just was an opportunity in a workshop setting just to explain that, when we do have funds that are sitting or that are being carried over from one year to the next, spanning summer projects or what have you, this is where the monies will be and where that line item of interest income comes from. Thank you, John.
Questions, comments? 2.5% is good for liquid. That's really good. Yeah. Yeah, I know. There you go. All right, thank you. All right, let's get. Is that the last of your presentation?
That was it, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other questions regarding the staff presentation before we go into our meeting dates? All right, seeing no questions, meeting dates. Talking with staff and recognizing we had such great turnout at our first meeting being a Thursday evening, I thought Thursdays would probably be a good time. And what we're looking at is we're going to have four meetings a year, quarterly meetings, and we would meet the last Thursday of the last month of each quarter. And with the exception of December, we would have to fudge that because that would put us in the Christmas, New Year's time, and that's not going to probably work that well. But the last Thursday of the last month of each quarter, that would allow us to review the expenditures of the quarter soon to be finished, and then also present our findings on the projection for the next quarter, which will allow me to do a quick report to the school board at the following meeting, which would be at the beginning of their next quarter with regard to expenditures for sales tax. Comments, questions, better ideas? There's no pride of authorship with that. I was so surprised we had such good turnout on the first Thursday. I'm like, that's got to be a good day.
What kind of time?
Hour and a half.
I mean,
6 o'clock, 6 to 7:30. Well, that was where we initially, but we can make it different. I think we're all willing to be flexible. What works for you? 6 to 7:30? I see a lot of heads shaking yes. That's good. That's consensus. We're good. Wow. That was easy.
So the next meeting will be Thursday, March 28th.
Right. And we will have the information. The board will get the information. Board staff will get the information to us a week ahead of time.
Correct.
So you'll have a whole week to review it, and which includes a weekend for those of us who work, which is always kind of nice.
And they will be in the boardroom.
Yes.
And you're going to have the results of the meeting you're having with the other, for the capital plan as well?
We will send out our updated information after we brief our board on Tuesday. Yes, so you'll actually have a more than the week's time frame to have that information and look at it prior to that committee meeting.
Okay. Members' comments. Anyone have any comments they'd like to make? None. I have one member's comment. I turn my comment time over to Mr. Gregg.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to let everybody know, and I think some of you on the committee do know, staff knows, but I have resigned my position as the Chief Financial Officer. My last day is to be Friday, March 22nd, but I also will be at this meeting on the 28th. It's a variety of reasons, personal, work-life balance. My wife and I have our little 2-year-old. I've really enjoyed my time here at the district. There is tremendous work and tremendous gains and tremendous opportunity that this district has ahead of it. And it's never an easy decision, but part of knowing the team that is here to carry this forward, if you can call it making it any easier, that was definitely a big factor. So the district, is in the process of the transition. I actually had provided this notice a while ago, actually, to give significant time for the transition, but there's never enough time. But there is, again, like I said, a tremendous amount of work that has gone into this, that will continue to go into this. And I know a lot of the committee members outside of the district. So I will, and I've always been around the district personally and professionally, and will continue to do so, and in support of everything that's happening here. So I'm very excited about that opportunity, getting back out into the community from that aspect. But I thought it was fair, and Mr. Mazurkowitz, our chair, as he's been meeting with us, had this discussion and deferred to him, and so I thought it was fair for this committee to know as we go forward.
Well, since I've been the predominant one working with you from this committee, let me share with the committee the professionalism of Greg and his staff has been exceptional. Their openness to respond to any questions, their understanding of my philosophy of getting all of you the information you need to feel comfortable making the tough decisions we're going to have to make to the school board has been all of it. The whole relationship has been exceptional. He is going to be sorely missed. I have great hopes that our superintendent will hire a great replacement who we will have the same kind of relationship with.
Absolutely.
And best of luck to you in your new endeavors.
Thank you. I'm not leaving the community. I'll be around here in Lee County, going back to banking. Okay. All right. I guess we'll talk after the meeting. All right.
All right. Any other comments from members? Wow. We are done. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.